Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for new stories. In the deep recesses of the galactic archives, nestled within the forbidden sector of the universe, one alien species had long debated the true nature of humanity. The Arvash, an ancient race of hyper-intelligent beings who had explored countless worlds and catalogued unimaginable species, had come to a singular conclusion: humans, in all their diversity and unpredictability, possessed the most perplexing and perplexed appendages in the galaxy: hands. The Arvash could not understand why something so illogical, so inefficient, could be the defining trait of an entire species. From the moment they first encountered humans, flawed, primitive creatures with frail bodies and a bizarre attachment to their hands, they watched, both fascinated and horrified, at the misuse and inconsistency that plagued this appendage. To the Arvash, who had evolved beyond the need for physical manipulation, the human hand was an anomaly. Despite its supposed dexterity, it was clumsy, prone to injury, and entirely unsuited for the grand scale of the universe. One Arvash researcher, Emre Kazar, stood at the forefront of this study. It was his curiosity that led him to make the first direct contact with humans, to understand what made them so unusual. What he found was not just an appendage, but an entire species that viewed their hands as something of divine importance, creating art, building worlds, and even waging war. This, in itself, was perplexing to Emre, who had long since transcended the biological needs of a body. Despite his doubts, Emre was intrigued. He had no choice but to observe further. He'd seen other species in the galaxy, each one with perfect evolutionary adaptations. Some species had developed telekinesis, others controlled energy with their minds, and some had fully integrated with technology. But humans? They relied on these strange, seemingly incapable tools at the ends of their arms. It was then that he discovered the first significant insight: the humans didn't care about their hands. They made no attempt to perfect them. They just used them. They used them to create, to destroy, to help, and to harm. But it was in this reckless unpredictability that their power emerged. Emre, despite his advanced intellect, could not deny it. There was something about humans that was dangerous. Emre's observations led to a decision. He would make first contact with a human. He was not naive enough to believe it would be easy. He had read the reports on the planet Earth, a place of conflict, division, and confusion, but his scientific curiosity outpaced his caution. On a remote stretch of Earth, Emre chose to meet with a human, a former soldier named Gabriel Weller, who had once commanded a unit in the Earth's armed forces. Emre had studied the history of humanity's warfare, and he had been struck by the way humans wielded their hands in battle. Their unpredictable nature on the battlefield, the way they would break formation or abandon tactics in the heat of the moment, was both baffling and impressive. No other species would ever risk such chaos, but it seemed that for humans, it was part of their core nature. Gabriel stood on the rocky shore of a forgotten island, alone in his thoughts, when the sky above him flickered. His world was about to be forever altered. When Emre first appeared, Gabriel's response was immediate: confusion, then alarm. But the Arvash, with their perfect control over their forms, emanated an aura of calm, of patience. Gabriel, who had faced countless threats in his life, was momentarily disarmed. The alien, if it was an alien, did not demand anything of him. Instead, it merely observed, its eyes seemingly reading his thoughts. Emre's voice rang in Gabriel's mind: "You, humans? You wield your hands with such rawness. I must understand why." Gabriel felt a strange, instant connection to the being, something that made him put down his weapon and let the moment stretch on, though he had no idea why. What happened next was beyond anything either of them had expected. Emre saw through the human's memories, tracing through decades of human history, wars, peace, love, and loss, and he understood for the first time the illogical brilliance of humanity's hands. Emre had thought that humans used their hands only for war or for basic survival. But he now saw them creating the impossible: the pyramids, space travel, art that could inspire, and songs that could move galaxies. In every single memory there was a pattern. Human hands, flawed and imperfect, were at the heart of all that made them special. They were not weapons of perfection. They were weapons of hope, creation, and rebellion against the cosmos. The following weeks saw Emre continue his study of Gabriel and, through him, the deeper intricacies of human nature. They spoke of warfare, art, science, and spirituality. Gabriel, at first skeptical, slowly began to trust the alien. He learned that Emre's species had long ago abandoned their own hands, long since evolved past them. Emre spoke with awe about the superiority of his species' intellect and physical capabilities, but Gabriel began to argue that true strength wasn't in perfection. It was in striving toward something greater despite the flaws. As Emra continued his study, he began to see the world through Gabriel's eyes. His perspective began to shift. Where once he saw weakness, he now saw the untapped potential of the human spirit. The universe, he realized, was full of beings who had perfected their tools. But humans used their hands to reach beyond their limits. The true test came when Emra's mission took a sudden turn. The peaceful meeting between the two was interrupted when a hostile alien force arrived in the system. The invaders, an aggressive, technologically advanced race, demanded that Emra surrender Gabriel to them. What followed was the first true test of human strength. With nothing more than his wits in his hands, Gabriel led Emra into battle. Gabriel fought with an instinctual grace that Emra had never before witnessed. The human didn't rely on advanced technology or telekinetic power, but on the sheer force of will. His hands were the tools of his survival, a testament to the deep, unspoken bond between a human and their physical form. As the battle raged, Emra realized that humans didn't need perfection. Their hands and the mind that wielded them were more than capable of overcoming any odds. In the final moments of battle, as the alien forces began to falter, Emra's understanding reached a breaking point. The strength of the human hand was not merely in its utility. It was in the endless drive to create, destroy, and push the boundaries of what was possible. The universe could not contain such a species. And in that moment, Emra knew the truth. Humans were not the stupidest beings in the galaxy. They were the most dangerous. Emra Khazar had seen countless species across the galaxy, each of them honed for specific purposes. Some had wings that could slice through the air with the precision of a blade, others possessed multidimensional sight, and still more could manipulate elements like gravity or time. Yet, none had puzzled him as much as the human species. He knew that the hands of these creatures were clumsy, imperfect tools compared to the flawless abilities of other races, but they seemed to wield an intangible power that no other species had demonstrated. The more he observed from afar, the more curious he became about how such a species had managed to dominate their planet despite their physical limitations. His decision to make direct contact was born out of this growing fascination. Emra had hoped that by engaging with a human firsthand, he would finally uncover the truth behind the mystery of their hands. He chose Gabriel Weller not out of any special preference, but because Gabriel represented an aspect of humanity that intrigued him. He was a former soldier, a man who had once commanded a unit, faced death on multiple occasions, and yet, through it all, had survived. The toughness of the human spirit had been something Emra had read about, but it was hard to truly understand until he witnessed it in person. The location Emra selected was an isolated, forgotten island in the Pacific Ocean, far from any human cities or military installations. It would give him a chance to approach his subject without interference. Gabriel had retired from active duty years ago, and now lived in solitude, far removed from the world of politics and war. Emra knew that to gain his trust, he would need to approach him with caution, offering no threat. The first encounter was not planned in any conventional sense. Emra's craft descended gently from the sky, breaking the tranquil silence of the island. Gabriel, who had been staring out across the vast expanse of the ocean, was immediately on alert. His instincts kicked in and his military training took over. He reached for the weapon he kept hidden in the rocks by his side, but before he could do more than glance at the figure emerging from the ship, a voice entered his mind, cold and foreign. "Do not be alarmed, human. I do not intend harm." Gabriel's body stiffened, his hand trembling over the hilt of his weapon. He had heard of such things, telepathic communication, but never thought he would be on the receiving end of it. Yet, the voice had an unsettling calmness, the sort that only beings far beyond humanity's understanding could possess. "Who are you?" Gabriel's voice broke the silence as he steadied his breath. He could feel his heart racing, but his mind was already working through the options. "What do you want from me?" The figure before him, tall, alien, and striking in its otherworldly grace, did not answer immediately. Instead, it took a step forward, allowing the shimmering light of the alien ship to reflect off its form. Gabriel could see the fine details of the being's features now, the smooth skin, the delicate, elongated limbs, and the large, almost glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through him. "I am Emra Khazar of the AR Vash." The voice again echoed in Gabriel's mind, more assured now. "I seek understanding. You humans? You wield your hands in such peculiar ways. I wish to understand why. Why, of all things, do you choose to create with such crude tools?" Gabriel narrowed his eyes, momentarily forgetting the weapon in his hand as he processed the question. It was an odd one, but he understood the essence of it. The Arvash, this alien race, were so advanced, so far beyond humanity's reach, that the idea of creating with something as flawed as a human hand must have seemed completely absurd. "You've been watching us, haven't you?" Gabriel said, a hint of disbelief in his voice. His eyes never left the aliens. "Yes. From afar for a long time now. Your hands are primitive, inefficient. Yet they seem to be the center of everything you do. I must understand why you rely on them." Emra's tone was almost scholarly, as if he were discussing an intriguing puzzle that had eluded him for eons. Gabriel smirked despite the strangeness of the situation. His hands flexed as if sensing the weight of the conversation. "You must have a pretty low opinion of us then. You've probably seen us fight wars, build cities, even destroy our own planet. But you're missing the bigger picture. Our hands aren't perfect. But maybe that's why they're so special." Emra tilted his head slightly, intrigued by the response. "Special?" "Yeah," Gabriel continued, standing up fully now, his posture firm but not hostile. "You might think we're stupid or primitive or whatever, but we make things happen. We build, we destroy, we survive, and we dream, all with these hands of ours. They're not the smartest tools in the galaxy. But we don't just use them to survive. We use them to change everything. To shape the world around us." He glanced down at his calloused palms, almost with reverence. "The hands might not be perfect, but they're the only ones we've got. And we make them work, even when the odds are stacked against us." For the first time, Emra Khazar paused, his otherworldly mind struggling to fully comprehend what Gabriel had just said. The idea of imperfection was foreign to him. The Arvash had long abandoned their physical forms, evolving beyond the need for crude, biological tools. But there was a weight to Gabriel's words. Perhaps, in their own way, the human hands did possess something rare, a sense of purpose that transcended the mechanics of their design. Emra looked at Gabriel, his expression unreadable. "You believe your hands make you powerful?" Gabriel's gaze never wavered. "We don't just believe it. We prove it." Emra had never encountered anything like this. Humans were supposed to be weak, disposable, and inefficient. Yet here was a man, no different from the countless others Emra had observed, showing no fear, no hesitation. The thought lingered in the alien's mind. Could it be that humans, for all their flaws, held an unknowable power within them? A faint hum reverberated through the air as Emra's ship powered down, preparing to leave. Yet Emra stood still, lost in thought. "Perhaps, there is more to you than I initially believed." Gabriel didn't respond immediately, but as the alien turned to leave, he spoke one final time, his words carrying more weight than he expected. "It's not just about the hands, you know. It's about what we do with them." With that, Emra Khazar's ship rose into the sky, and the two beings parted ways. But the seed of doubt had been planted in the mind of the Arvash researcher. Perhaps humans, in all their seemingly irrational glory, had something no other species possessed. And Emra knew that he would have to learn more. The days following the first contact were filled with silent reflection for both Gabriel Weller and Emra Khazar. Gabriel returned to his secluded life on the island, feeling an unease that had been absent from his life for years. He couldn't shake the encounter with the alien, the strange, almost gentle presence of Emra, and the bizarre conversation about hands of all things. The more he thought about it, the more unsettling it became. The alien had seemed so sure of its superiority, yet the question lingered in Gabriel's mind. Had it truly understood humanity? Had it grasped why they fought, created, and destroyed so recklessly? Or was it too blinded by its own arrogance to see beyond the surface? Meanwhile, Emra spent the days following his meeting with Gabriel in his ship, orbiting the planet and processing everything he had learned. The encounter had shaken him in a way he hadn't expected. He had studied humanity for years, watched from a distance as they waged wars, rebuilt cities, and created technological wonders. But it was different now. Having met Gabriel, having felt the raw, unyielding spirit of humanity firsthand, Emra found himself questioning the conclusions he had long held about the human race. The hands, the human hands. They were so flawed, so clumsy, yet they seemed to be the catalyst for everything humanity had achieved. And, as Gabriel had pointed out, it was not simply about using their hands. It was about what they did with them. Emra couldn't help but wonder if he had missed something crucial in his studies. Perhaps the key to understanding humanity wasn't in their technology, their wars, or their peace treaties. It was in their willpower, in the drive to keep reaching for something greater, even in the face of their own limitations. Emra had heard of human resilience before, but it had always seemed like a concept, something abstract, something that could be read about in books. Now it was real. Gabriel had proven that to him. He had faced his share of battles, but he had also created something with his hands, something beyond the physical, the resolve to keep going no matter the odds. Emra was beginning to see it. That spark. That human spark that no amount of technology or evolution could replicate. The spark that made humans dangerous. Days later, Emra returned to Earth, not as an observer but as a participant. He sought out Gabriel again, eager to engage further, to test the theories forming in his mind. He knew Gabriel would be suspicious, but Emra was no longer concerned with diplomacy or the established protocols of his race. This was personal now. He had to understand. Gabriel was working on the shore when he saw the ship descend again, its sleek form cutting through the sky like a shadow. He had known Emra would return. There had been an unsettling, inevitable feel to their last conversation. The question was why? What could an alien possibly want with him, a retired soldier with no special skills, no greater purpose than to live in quiet solitude? As Emra's ship landed, Gabriel stood up, brushing the sand off his pants. He had no weapon this time. He had learned something crucial from his last encounter. The alien wasn't interested in combat. Emra didn't come here to fight. He came for something else, something Gabriel wasn't yet prepared to face. The door of the ship opened and Emra emerged, his presence as imposing as before, but this time, there was something different about the way he approached. He seemed curious. Not just scientific curiosity but something deeper, something almost personal. I have thought about our conversation, Gabriel Weller, Emra spoke, his voice in Gabriel's mind once more. Your hands? I have been wrong. They are not just tools of creation or destruction. They are something more. I have come to ask you to show me. To show me how you, a human, use your hands? Gabriel blinked, processing the request. His mind raced through 1,000 possibilities. What did the alien mean by show me? Was Emra asking for some kind of demonstration of human creativity, of humanity's potential? Or was this just another intellectual game for the alien, another test of human ability? He folded his arms across his chest, skeptical but intrigued. You want to see how I use my hands? Well, I suppose I could show you how to build a shelter or carve a piece of wood, if that's what you're asking. Emra's eyes shimmered slightly, a faint glint of something like amusement or anticipation in his expression. No. I want to see something more. Gabriel's brow furrowed, but before he could ask, Emra gestured toward the wide expanse of the island. You have the ability to make something out of nothing, to create meaning where there is none. This is what I seek to understand. This is the power of the human hand, and I need to witness it firsthand. For a moment, Gabriel felt a strange sense of being judged, like a student under the gaze of a teacher. But he pushed the feeling aside. He knew what Emra wanted now. He wanted to see humanity's greatest strength, our ability to shape the world around us despite the odds, despite the limitations. Gabriel thought for a moment, then nodded. All right. Follow me. He led Emra to a small clearing in the forest. The area was littered with natural debris, fallen branches, stones, dried leaves. Gabriel knelt down, his rough hands moving with practiced ease as he began to construct something. A small structure, something simple but meaningful. Emra watched intently, his mind analyzing every movement, every flick of Gabriel's fingers as they bent and shaped the materials. There was something primal in the way Gabriel worked, as if he were connected to the earth itself. He didn't need any advanced tools or machinery. All he needed were his hands, his mind, and the will to create something functional, something real. As Gabriel worked, Emra asked questions, his voice calm but laced with curiosity. Why do you build? Why create something when you have nothing to gain from it? Your species, your hands, are not perfect. So why do you persist in using them? Gabriel paused, glancing up at the alien. He had never been asked this before, not in such a way. He thought for a moment, then answered quietly, we build because it's in our nature. We create because we can. It's not about being perfect. It's about making something that lasts, even if we know it won't last forever. We're driven by the need to leave something behind, to leave a mark on the world. That's why we use our hands. Emra absorbed the words. He had been seeking logic, understanding, the flawless patterns of creation, but he was learning that humanity's true strength didn't lie in perfection. It lay in their imperfection, their ability to try, to fail, and to try again. The alien was beginning to understand. As Gabriel finished his small shelter, he stood back, his eyes scanning the simple construction. It wasn't much, but it was his. It was his work, his hands at their best, shaping the world just as humanity had done for millennia. Emra finally spoke, his voice softer than before. Perhaps I have misjudged you, Gabriel. Your hands, they are not stupid. They are, in fact, something extraordinary. Gabriel smiled faintly, wiping the sweat from his brow. Yeah, we might be stupid sometimes, but we know how to get things done. Emra nodded, looking at the shelter in silence. The galaxy had a new mystery to ponder, the hands of humanity. And he had only just begun to understand their true power. Emra Khazar spent the next few days observing Gabriel in silence, his once unyielding scientific mind now filled with uncertainty. Gabriel's hands, so unremarkable in their appearance, had begun to shift from the realm of mere curiosity to something far more profound. The alien had seen countless species over the millennia, each one honed for specific tasks, each one perfectly adapted to its environment. But humanity was different. The hands, though crude compared to the advanced technologies Emra was accustomed to, seemed to hold a secret, something beyond mere physical limitations. What he had witnessed in Gabriel's simple act of creation had defied logic. The human hands did not just build or destroy, they adapted, they persevered, and, most perplexing of all, they willed things into existence. Even though they were physically weaker than the limbs of many species, there was something deeper at play, a force of will, a power of determination that no advanced species had ever demonstrated. Gabriel had shown him a shelter, a small, crude structure that could hardly be considered a marvel of engineering. Yet, in its simplicity, it had sparked something in Emra. It wasn't the shelter itself that mattered. It was the act of creating it. The alien began to question whether his perspective on humanity had been hopelessly narrow. Perhaps the human hand did not need to be perfect. Perhaps it was their imperfections that made them so dangerous. It was their flaws that fueled their endless drive to improve, to build, and to create. Emra had learned more than he expected, but he knew there was one final test. He needed to understand how far this human drive could extend. How far would Gabriel's hands go to protect what he valued? How far could the resilience of humanity stretch when confronted with true danger? He had studied human warfare. He had read the histories of their brutal conflicts, wars that spanned entire continents, that ravaged entire civilizations. Yet it was clear that the war itself was not what had interested Emra. It was the humans' response to it. The way they had rebuilt their societies, their cities, and their minds after every defeat. How they picked themselves up, no matter how far they had fallen. But Gabriel had been a soldier. A man who had known conflict. Emra now knew that it was time to test not only Gabriel's resilience but his capacity for true sacrifice. To test whether the human spirit could stand against an enemy more formidable than anything he had yet encountered. And so, without warning, Emra set his plan into motion. A week later, Gabriel woke to an odd hum in the air. His instincts flared. The calm of the island was gone, replaced with a strange energy that made the hairs on his neck stand on end. He stepped outside his shelter, squinting into the distance. A dark shape was descending from the sky, blotting out the sun. Within moments, Emra's craft landed once again, but this time there was something different in the air. The ship was larger, its surface darker, more menacing. As the hatch opened, Emra emerged, his expression unreadable. "What's going on?" Gabriel asked, sensing the change in the atmosphere. His hand instinctively went to the small weapon he had kept hidden in his shelter. Emra, however, did not seem concerned. His voice entered Gabriel's mind, calm but tinged with a sense of gravity. "I have come to test you, Gabriel Weller. To test your hands. Your ability to create and to destroy, to survive and protect." Gabriel furrowed his brow. "What are you talking about? Are you trying to provoke me?" He stepped forward, his muscles tensing. Emra remained still, his gaze distant. "You see, Gabriel, in my travels, I have observed that the greatest strength of your species lies not in your ability to conquer, but in your ability to endure. To protect those you love, even when faced with impossible odds. And so, I have brought a challenge to you. A trial of your hands, of your spirit." Before Gabriel could respond, the ground trembled beneath his feet. The sky above them darkened, and an ominous shadow cast itself over the island. From the horizon, a massive creature appeared, a beast unlike anything Gabriel had ever seen. It was enormous, its body covered in thick, armored plates, with eyes that glowed a dangerous red. Its claws were like jagged blades, and its mouth opened with a roar that shook the very earth beneath them. Gabriel's breath caught in his throat. It was a creature unlike any animal he had ever encountered on Earth. A beast that seemed otherworldly, possibly an invention of Emra's to test humanity's resolve. "You will fight it, Gabriel," Emra's voice reverberated in his mind. "You will face this creature with nothing but your hands and your will. Defeat it, and I will understand the true strength of humanity. Fail, and I will leave, never to return." Gabriel's heart raced as the creature lumbered closer. There was no time for second-guessing. He had been a soldier, but this was different. This wasn't a battle for territory or resources. It was a test, one that would define humanity in the eyes of an alien who had seen countless worlds, countless species. Gabriel clenched his fists. He knew he wasn't prepared for this. Not physically, at least. The creature was massive, its sheer size and strength making it a terrifying opponent. But what it lacked, what it could never understand, was the human spirit. Gabriel could feel it within him, a fire that burned hotter than any fear, any doubt. His hands were not perfect, but they were his, and he would use them to protect the world he loved. The creature charged, its claws slashing through the air with deadly precision. Gabriel leaped aside, narrowly avoiding the first strike. His feet hit the ground hard and he rolled to the side, narrowly dodging another attack. The creature's speed was deceptive, but Gabriel's military training kicked in, and he moved with the fluidity of someone who had faced death before. He couldn't beat it by brute force alone. No, he had to outthink it, outlast it. He grabbed a large rock from the ground, using it to block another swipe of the creature's claws. His hands, though worn and calloused from years of physical labor and combat, still moved with purpose, each strike, each maneuver, calculated to wear down the beast. The fight dragged on, hours seeming to blur together as Gabriel fought to keep the creature at bay. His muscles screamed in protest, his body battered and bloodied from the relentless battle. But he kept going. He couldn't stop. The creature was relentless, but so was he. His hands were bruised, but they kept swinging, kept defending. The primal urge to survive coursed through him like a lifeline. Emra watched from the sidelines, his expression unreadable. For the first time he saw the true power of humanity, not in their technology or their wars, but in their ability to endure, to fight, and to protect the things they loved. And as Gabriel, with bloodied hands and a defiant spirit, struck the final blow against the creature, Emra knew he had witnessed something extraordinary. Perhaps, in the end, humanity's greatest strength was not in their perfection, but in their flaws. The imperfections of their hands, their bodies, and their minds were what made them unstoppable. Gabriel had passed the test. Gabriel stood panting, his hands still trembling from the fight. The beast had fallen, its massive body sprawled across the ground, blood pooling around its lifeless form. Every muscle in Gabriel's body screamed in pain, but there was no time to rest. His mind raced, processing what had just happened. The creature had been formidable, but it had been defeated by his determination, by his hands, by his unyielding will to survive. As he wiped the blood from his brow, Gabriel turned to Emra, who stood silently watching the aftermath. The alien had remained distant during the entire battle, observing in silence, but Gabriel could see that something had changed in Emra's expression. He could sense it, the shift in the alien's understanding of humanity. It was as though the pieces of a puzzle had finally clicked into place. Emra stepped forward, his eyes glowing faintly. There was no longer any condescension in his gaze, no superiority in his stance. What he saw in Gabriel now was not just a human soldier, he saw something much larger. He saw the resilience of an entire species, the relentless drive to protect, to build, to rise again after every fall. "I have underestimated you, Gabriel Weller," Emra's voice echoed in Gabriel's mind, softer than before. "I came here thinking that your species was little more than a curiosity, a primitive race struggling to survive. I now realize I was wrong. I see the strength of your people now, in the way you fought, in the way you never gave up. It's not in your technology, your weapons, or your intellect that you stand apart. It is in your hands. It is in your spirit." Gabriel exhaled sharply, the tension in his body slowly easing as he processed Emra's words. "I told you we're not perfect, but we don't stop. That's the difference." Emra nodded slowly as though absorbing every word. "I thought your hands were an anomaly, clumsy, inefficient, a weakness. But now I see them for what they truly are. The embodiment of your species' strength. The ability to adapt, to create, to defend. They are not stupid, Gabriel. Your hands are your greatest weapon." The alien's words hung in the air, heavy with an unspoken admiration. Gabriel felt a surge of pride, though he wasn't entirely sure why. He had always known his hands weren't extraordinary, just tools like everyone else's. But Emra's perspective had given him a glimpse of something deeper. Perhaps the true power of humanity lay not in the perfection of their actions or creations, but in the will behind them. The determination to push forward, to rise from the ashes and try again. Before Gabriel could respond, the air around them seemed to shimmer. Emra raised his hand, and with a sudden wave of his fingers, the massive creature's body began to disintegrate. The alien technology, far beyond anything human hands could imagine, reduced the beast's remains to dust in seconds. Gabriel stared at the process in awe. It wasn't just about the creature's destruction, it was about what Emra had done with a simple gesture. The alien's hands, so far removed from anything human, moved with the precision of a machine, the elegance of an artist, the intent of a surgeon. For a moment Gabriel felt small. But then he remembered the fight. He had fought with his hands, with all the limitations of his human body, and he had won. You could have used that technology to destroy the beast immediately, Gabriel said, his voice hoarse from the battle. Why didn't you? Emra lowered his hand, his gaze shifting back to Gabriel. Because this was your test, Gabriel. Not mine. I needed to see if you would fight. If you would rely on yourself, your instincts, your will. Only then would I understand what makes your species so dangerous. Gabriel nodded, a quiet realization settling over him. He hadn't been fighting for some grand goal or for glory. He had fought because it was his only choice, because survival meant everything to him. And in that moment he realized that the true strength of humanity was not in their technology or their weapons. It was in their refusal to quit, in their capacity for endurance, for rising again when the odds were stacked against them. Emra, still silent, turned his gaze to the horizon. There was a strange stillness in the air, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Gabriel's chest tightened with the awareness that the encounter with the alien had not only changed him but had irrevocably altered Emra's understanding of humanity. You've proven something to me, Gabriel Weller, Emra said finally, his voice tinged with an unfamiliar warmth. I have seen your species in a new light. You are not weak. You are not foolish. Your hands, they are not stupid. They are the key to your survival, to your success. Gabriel's lips twisted into a tired smile. I never said they were stupid. But I guess I get what you mean now. Emra stepped closer, his gaze lingering on Gabriel with a strange intensity. You've taught me something, Gabriel. I thought your species was destined for extinction, a primitive, fleeting existence. But now I understand that it is your drive, your relentless determination, that will carry you far beyond what I ever imagined. Humanity is not a species to be underestimated. And I will make sure others understand this truth. Gabriel raised an eyebrow, his voice steady. You're not going to wipe us out? Emra shook his head slowly. No, I'm not. Quite the opposite, in fact. You have earned my respect. And I will leave you to your future, your growth. The universe is vast, Gabriel, and I will share your story. Others will know what I now understand. Humanity's greatest strength is not in their intellect, their technology, or their wars. It is in their hands, imperfect, flawed, and yet powerful beyond measure. Gabriel's heart swelled with something like pride, though he couldn't quite name the feeling. He had always known humanity had something special. But hearing it from Emra, an alien who had seen countless worlds and species, made it undeniable. The alien turned away, his ship already beginning to hum with the power of its engines. I will leave you now, Gabriel. But know this, you have proven yourself to be a force to be reckoned with. And I will carry the memory of your hands with me. As Emra's ship ascended into the sky, disappearing into the vast expanse of space, Gabriel stood still, watching the trail of light fade away. There were no words left to say, only the hum of the wind and the quiet pounding of his heart. He had passed the test. And in doing so, he had proven that humanity's greatest strength lay not in their intellect, nor in their technology, but in their ability to endure, to create, and to protect with nothing more than their hands. Weeks passed since the alien's departure, but Gabriel couldn't shake the weight of the encounter. The memory of the battle with the creature, the way Emra had observed him and his species, seemed to echo in his mind daily. Despite the peace that had returned to the island, the words Emra had spoken, the admiration for humanity's hands, kept reverberating in his thoughts. Was this truly the beginning of something larger? Had their encounter really altered the course of human history? Or had Emra's respect for humanity been nothing more than a fleeting moment? Gabriel wasn't sure, but there was a sense of unease growing within him. While he had gained a deeper understanding of his species' strength, a gnawing question lingered. What did this respect from an alien race mean? What would others make of it? Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for something much bigger. The universe was vast, filled with species far more advanced than they could imagine, and now the potential to be seen as a significant force among them felt both exhilarating and terrifying. One evening, as Gabriel sat outside his shelter, the flickering of his campfire illuminated his worn hands. He turned them over slowly, feeling the calluses, the scars, and the muscle memory of countless moments of toil and struggle. These hands had built his shelter, had fended off beasts, and had now earned the respect of an alien civilization. There was no way of knowing what was to come next, but he understood that something fundamental had changed in him, and in humanity. The peaceful solitude of the island was abruptly interrupted by a sharp noise in the air, a low hum that grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath him. His first instinct was to reach for the weapon he kept hidden close by, but he didn't move. He knew the sound too well. The sleek ship that had once landed on his island, carrying Emra, was back. Gabriel stood slowly, walking toward the clearing where the ship's shadow loomed. The ship landed softly, its thrusters fading into quiet as it settled onto the ground. The hatch opened and once again Emra stepped out, his presence as imposing as ever. But this time, there was no mask of curiosity or condescension on his face. There was something different, almost like he was waiting for something. Gabriel raised an eyebrow. "I didn't think you were coming back." Emra met his gaze, his voice quiet but resonant. "I said I would not leave you to your future without a message." Gabriel's lips pressed into a thin line. "A message? From who?" "From the others," Emra said. "The ones who heard my story. The ones who were intrigued." Gabriel's heart skipped a beat. Intrigued? He didn't know whether to be cautious or curious. "So, you're telling me that after one fight you convinced others to care about us?" Emra nodded. "I was wrong to assume you were insignificant. There are many civilizations across the galaxy who have watched your species, but most dismiss you as unworthy of attention. Primitive. But what I saw in you, what I saw in the strength of your hands, it has made others reconsider. They are not convinced that humanity can stand against the might of the universe, but they are watching. And they are now prepared to listen." Gabriel stared at the alien, a mixture of awe and fear bubbling inside him. "So, we're not being wiped out?" "No, Gabriel," Emra replied, his voice calm but filled with a deep sense of conviction. "You are not just a curiosity. Humanity has proven itself capable of far more. Your people will be tested in ways you cannot yet comprehend, but you will not be alone. And I will ensure that no one underestimates you again." Gabriel took a step closer, still unsure of what this meant. His mind raced. "But we've always fought for survival, against each other, against nature. How do we prepare for whatever's coming next?" Emra studied Gabriel with an expression that seemed almost sympathetic. "You have already begun, Gabriel. Your hands, your resilience, are your greatest weapon. But this will not be enough on its own. You must learn to adapt, to unite. The galaxy is filled with species far beyond your current understanding. Many of them are not peaceful, and many have no interest in negotiating. But they will understand what your species is capable of when you stand together." Gabriel clenched his fists, the weight of Emra's words sinking in. "You're saying we have to become something else. Something more. Something that can hold its own in a galaxy full of threats." "Yes." The silence between them stretched for a moment before Gabriel spoke again. "And you're sure we're ready?" Emra's eyes softened. "You are ready to take the first step. The future is not certain, and your species has many flaws. But in those flaws there is strength. There is a drive that no other species can match. You are not perfect, but that is what makes you capable of more than anyone realizes." Gabriel exhaled slowly, looking out over the island that had been his home for so long. A part of him felt a sense of peace here, as though he had found something to cling to in the chaos. But Emra's words made it clear, he couldn't stay here forever. The universe was calling, and humanity was no longer a species on the fringes. They were on the verge of something greater, something that could change the course of history. "I'll do what I can," Gabriel said finally, determination hardening his voice. "We'll do what we can. But it's going to take time. We're not ready for whatever you're talking about." Emra nodded. "It will take time, yes. But you have something that many do not. The will to continue. The strength to survive. And in that strength you will grow." Before Gabriel could ask any more questions, Emra turned and began to walk toward the ship. "We are not alone in this, Gabriel. The message has been sent. Your people have been seen. And when the time comes, they will stand with you." Gabriel watched as the alien climbed back into the ship, the hatch closing behind him. For a moment, he stood in silence, processing everything that had just been said. The road ahead was unclear, but the path was now open, stretching out in front of humanity in ways they had never imagined. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a part of something much larger, something that had the potential to shake the very fabric of the universe. Gabriel turned toward the horizon, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. His hands, scarred and calloused, felt ready. They had proven themselves once before. And now they would do so again. The weeks that followed Emra's visit were a whirlwind of activity for Gabriel. The message had been sent, as the alien had promised, But there were no immediate signs of the larger galactic community rushing to meet humanity. In fact, Gabriel sometimes questioned whether Emra's words were simply an attempt to comfort him, to offer hope for a future that might never come. But deep down, Gabriel knew something had shifted. Humanity had crossed a threshold and there was no going back. In the quiet of his camp, Gabriel had worked tirelessly to prepare for what he knew was coming. He gathered every piece of technology he could find, everything he had learned about combat, and began to train himself, physically, mentally, and emotionally. He couldn't afford to be unprepared when the time came for humanity to face the galaxy's true challenges. And he wasn't alone in his efforts. Word of Emra's visit had spread, sparking a quiet revolution within the human community. Small groups of survivors, leaders, and thinkers had gathered to discuss the future. They shared their knowledge, traded resources, and exchanged plans for how humanity would unite in the face of the unknown. The world, which had been fractured by war and isolation for so long, was beginning to heal. Gabriel could feel the change in the air. People were beginning to see beyond the borders that had once divided them. One evening, while he was running through a set of combat drills, Gabriel heard a low hum in the distance. He paused, wiping the sweat from his brow, and turned to face the sound. The ship was back. This time there was no hesitation in its approach. It landed smoothly in the clearing, its sleek form reflecting the orange glow of the setting sun. Emra stepped out, his alien form even more imposing in the fading light. But this time, there was a sense of purpose in his movements. He wasn't just an observer now, he was a herald of change. Gabriel knew that this moment had been coming for a long time. Gabriel Weller, Emra's voice resonated across the quiet space, as though the very air was listening. It is time. Gabriel straightened up, his heart pounding in his chest. Time for what? Emra stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. Time for humanity to take its place among the stars. You are no longer a species on the fringes of galactic history. You are a force to be reckoned with, and the universe is now aware of you. Gabriel felt a surge of both pride and trepidation. I thought it would take years, decades even, for humanity to unite. To be ready. You're saying it's time now? You have been ready for much longer than you realize, Emra said. You just needed to see your own strength, your own potential. Now that you have, the galaxy will recognize it. The message I sent has reached far and wide. The time for humanity's test has come. But you will not be alone. Gabriel's brow furrowed as he absorbed Emra's words. What do you mean, the test? I mean that the galactic community is watching you. They will not simply accept your rise without challenge. Your species has much to prove. You are about to face trials that will test everything you are. Your resolve, your unity, your ability to adapt. The galaxy does not tolerate weakness. But I have seen your strength. And I will stand with you. Gabriel took a deep breath, his mind racing. The pressure of what Emra was saying felt almost unbearable. They weren't just being invited to join a larger community, they were being thrust into the heart of it to stand alongside, or against, some of the most powerful species in the galaxy. The burden of that responsibility felt heavier than anything he had ever faced. You said we won't be alone. Who will stand with us? Gabriel asked, his voice steady but with a note of uncertainty. The first step is unity, Emra replied. The other species, the ones who are watching, will not offer their support unless they see that you are capable of standing together. You must prove to them that humanity is not a fractured, primitive species, but a united force with the power to change the course of history. Gabriel nodded slowly, processing the enormity of the task ahead. The road to uniting humanity wasn't going to be easy. There were still divisions, old grudges, and prejudices to overcome. The scars of past wars were still fresh in the minds of many. But Emra was right. If humanity was going to stand a chance, they would have to come together, not just as individuals but as a united force. I'll do what I can, Gabriel said, determination rising in his chest. We all will. Emra's eyes softened, as though seeing something in Gabriel that had eluded him before. I have no doubt. But you will need more than just willpower. You will need your hands, your resilience, and your ability to work together. There are many who will try to undermine you, but if you stay true to what you are, if you hold fast to your spirit, then you will find a way. With a deep breath, Gabriel straightened his posture, steeling himself for the long journey ahead. What happens now? Emra looked up at the sky, his gaze far beyond the horizon. Now you prepare. I have made arrangements for a meeting with the Council of the Galactic Coalition. They will assess your species. The tests will begin, Gabriel. There is no turning back. Gabriel felt a shiver run down his spine. The galaxy was vast and its dangers were unknown, But for the first time he didn't feel alone. Emra's words, the bond they had forged, gave him a strange sense of hope. They weren't just humans on the fringe of a dying world anymore. They were a species with something to prove, and they had the strength to rise above whatever challenges lay ahead. "We'll rise to the challenge," Gabriel said firmly, the conviction in his voice resonating with the weight of the words. "We'll show them what we're made of." Emra gave a final, approving nod. "Good. It is time for humanity's true journey to begin." With those words, the alien turned back to his ship, the engines beginning to hum once again. The ship lifted into the sky, disappearing into the vast expanse of space. Gabriel stood, watching it vanish, the weight of the future pressing on him. The days following Emra's departure felt like the calm before a storm. Gabriel's heart raced every time he thought about the test that was about to come. It was no longer just a theory or a distant possibility, it was real. The world was about to change, and with it, humanity's place in the cosmos. Gabriel had no illusions about what this would mean. The stakes were higher now, and failure was not an option. Humanity's future was at risk, and the weight of that responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. He wasn't the only one feeling it though. The ripple effect of Emra's visit had spread far and wide. People from different corners of the world, long divided by politics and history, were beginning to come together. There was a sense of urgency in the air, a feeling that the time for unity had arrived, and it couldn't wait. Weeks passed, and Gabriel watched as humanity began to rally. Governments were no longer arguing over borders or resources. There was a singular focus now: survival. Diplomacy, once strained, now seemed possible in ways it never had before. Leaders were meeting, sharing knowledge, strategizing about how they would face the challenges ahead. It was as if a dormant part of humanity had awakened, something primal and determined, a collective strength that refused to be extinguished. But even with all this newfound unity, there was no certainty. Gabriel had seen too many betrayals, too many broken promises, to believe that peace would come easily. There were factions within humanity that still clung to their old ways, their old fears. Some saw the alien visit as a threat rather than a gift. Others wanted to cling to the old power structures, unwilling to embrace the idea of a united species. Gabriel stood before a gathering of leaders and representatives from all over the world. They had come together in a vast conference hall, one that had been built for a time such as this. The walls were adorned with screens that displayed images of humanity's greatest accomplishments, technological marvels, advancements in medicine, works of art that span generations. But today the focus wasn't on their past. Today it was on their future. "This is our moment," Gabriel spoke to the assembly, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We are no longer just individuals fighting for survival. We are humanity. And the universe is watching us. The test that Emra spoke of is real. The galaxy has taken notice, and they will not give us a free pass. We must unite. We must rise together, or we risk falling apart." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some nodded, some exchanged skeptical glances. Gabriel could see that the resistance to unity was still strong in some corners. The road ahead was going to be difficult. But there was no turning back now. "We have proven ourselves once before," Gabriel continued, "when we fought for our survival on this world. But now we have to prove that we are more than just survivors. We are builders, creators, innovators. We have the potential to change the course of history, not just for ourselves but for the entire galaxy. But it will not come easy. We will be tested. We will face challenges unlike anything we've encountered." He paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle in. "But I believe in us. I believe in our hands, our resilience, our spirit. And I believe that if we stand together, there is nothing we cannot overcome." The room fell silent. Gabriel could see the doubt in some eyes, but there was something else too, something that hadn't been there before. Hope. It was small, but it was there. A glimmer of belief that they could do this. From that day forward, the world began to prepare. They worked together, across cultures, languages, and ideologies, to build a coalition that could stand as one. The global resistance that had plagued humanity for centuries was slowly being dismantled by a common goal: to be ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. They developed new technologies, shared knowledge, and worked to create a unified military force that could defend against threats beyond their world. The weeks turned into months. The preparations were exhausting, but they were necessary. Gabriel watched as humanity's unity began to solidify, as people set aside their differences to focus on the greater good. But there was still something lingering in the back of his mind. The threat wasn't just external. It was internal. If humanity could not overcome its own divisions, if they couldn't find a way to truly unite, then all the preparation in the world wouldn't matter. And then one day it happened. The signal arrived. It came in the form of a transmission, a communication from the Galactic Coalition. It was brief, direct, and clear. They had arrived. The test was beginning. The message was simple. Humanity will be assessed. Prepare yourselves. Your place in the galaxy will be determined soon. Gabriel stood in the control center, watching the transmission flicker on the screen. His heart pounded as the realization set in. The moment had arrived. The test had begun. As the message ended, a deep silence settled over the room. The countdown had started. Humanity had no more time to prepare, no more time to second-guess themselves. They were ready, or they would fail. Gabriel turned to the leaders around him, the weight of history in his eyes. This is it. We've done all we can. Now we stand together. Humanity will face the greatest test we've ever known. But we will face it as one. The future was uncertain, and the challenges ahead would test humanity in ways they could never imagine. But as Gabriel stood there, surrounded by the leaders and representatives of Earth, he felt something he hadn't felt before. Certainty. Humanity would not fail. They had proven themselves worthy of a place in the galaxy, and no matter what came next, they would rise. Together. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.